everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of The Yard. We, as always, are so appreciative that you would join us this Thursday evening. It's 8:03 in Miami, which happens to be where I am. So there's nothing else going on other than The Yard right now. And tonight, I think, looms as a very interesting and exciting evening that lies ahead, because we have a wonderful guest that I'll be introducing shortly, but he's no stranger to our friends who come to the Yard frequently. The Yard, of course, is, wait a second, Craig has something that he says, get this, guys. 30 minutes ago, a guy called me to tell me that the Secret Service was at his home saying his roommate was busted with 14,000 in counterfeit bills.
Wow.
They asked him to sign a consent to search. Guess what I told him? My guess is you told him, don't sign. Do I have that vaguely right, Craig? Give me a thumb up if I sort of got it right. Yes? All right,
I think that's a no-brainer.
Yep.
14,000 in counterfeit bills. All right. The Yard, of course, is a production of Commissary Club. Commissary Club is the social network that we've created that seeks to connect folks with records as well as friends and family. And we have not officially launched Commissary Club, but nonetheless, it's available only on mobile in both iOS and Android. And I urge everybody to please download it and create an account and post whatever's on your mind and respond to whatever is on anybody else's mind. And while you're at it, give us a 5-star rating and check it out. We're going to be building it out. There are big plans for it. But there'll be more about that. And as I've mentioned in the past, we are partnering with Meek Mill, who, aside from being a prominent hip hop artist, is also very involved in criminal justice reform, and his record label, which is Dream Chasers Directly, and Rock Nation, which is Jay-Z's label. So we're going to be, among other things with them, doing a talent search. And we're going to be looking for folks who are in prison, as well as people who were in prison, who are interested in the hip hop business, who have lyrics that they want to share that could theoretically be used in Rock Nation artists' upcoming songs, and potentially be signed by one of these labels as an artist. Of course, they'd be paid for all of this, and that would be very, very exciting. We will soon have our, in addition to Commissary Club, as some of you perhaps know, we started by launching 70 Million Jobs as the first employment platform for people with records. As many people know, again, if you know this stuff, please don't be insulted that I'm repeating it. There's a direct correlation between unemployment and recidivism. 75% of people who are released from jail or prison will return to jail or prison, shortly thereafter, within a couple of years, certainly. And on average, they return like 4 or 5 times. It's not just once. 75%, 3 out of 4 people, but almost every one of them that are rearrested are unemployed at time of rearrest. Contrary-wise, people with jobs almost never ever get in trouble again, and in fact, sort of live happily ever after. So employment is absolutely the silver bullet. And, we targeted that as the first thing we wanted to take on. It took us a while to figure things out, but we started having a great deal of success, and we're successful in facilitating employment for thousands of deserving men and women. The pandemic had different plans for us because companies laid off wholesale pretty much all of our people. And, we're a for-profit business. Our revenue plummeted. So that was a pretty scary time. But rather than pack it in, we decided let's build out the community and through a social app that didn't exist, sort of like Facebook for ex-cons. If I can just sort of be politically incorrect and say ex-cons, I'm an ex-con. I don't really care.
You're safe on a yard, Richard.
I should be. In the yard, people sort of like that. It's like an old Humphrey Bogart movie. Yeah, I'm an ex-con, whatever. Yeah. It doesn't really bother. It's these folks, many of them who live in like ivory towers working at nonprofits who get upset about it, but actually people with records don't care. But in any event, we've got, we will soon be, have both Commissary Club and our employment platform will be soon on about 250,000 tablets that are in 430 prisons from coast to coast. And that's really like what has got me most jazzed up about anything. The idea of connecting with people, not the day after they get out, but the day they walk in, and having access and being able to share resources and create community there. And, and as a business person, establish our brand early on, and sort of be an advocate for people to use their time while incarcerated to sort of plan for their release and take, to the extent that there are opportunities, take advantage of, what they can be doing in prison, take classes, get certifications, read, make connections, write letters. There's so many things that you could do, that could be productive. So we are really beyond excited about that. And no one's ever had that opportunity before. No one has ever been able to access the ultimate, audience that is desperate to hear, to learn, to be entertained, et cetera, et cetera. So you'll be hearing more about that. It's taking forever, quite frankly, because we're dealing with prisons that don't move quickly and don't like new ideas in general, but we're sort of just battering our way in, and, we expect to have success one of these days. So you'll hear about that. Back to the yard. We have, I don't know if we've done like 35, 36, 38 of these episodes. And, we've had a bunch of people on, some of the people I knew or Seth knew or Divine knew, going in. And some of them were complete strangers to us. Some of them, they were strangers, but we knew of them. And some we just got to know along with everybody else. We've always been looking for people who were communicative, who sort of, could tell their story honestly, even when telling the story is painful or embarrassing. People who took ownership of their past. There's plenty of fingers to point, but one of the fingers to point, in my opinion, is also, at ourselves. Above all, everything else, I blame myself for whatever I did. I take responsibility. And I'm attracted to people who have the capacity, to have that sort of integrity and honesty. And sometimes that work, sometimes we found it, sometimes we haven't. To me, the best episodes have always been with people who are just really just relentlessly honest and willing to open their heart. And some people more than others were able to do that. But some of the moments, were very, very special. And needless to say, well, not needless to say, we record each one of these events. This is right now going on live, but for anyone who might want to watch past episodes, and we've had some prominent, great people, go to YouTube and then go type in Commissary Club, and then you will find each of the episodes from the past. These episodes will also be available to folks in prison when we're up with that. So, we tell all of our guests to be aware of that. And if they have anything that they want to communicate to their brothers and sisters who are currently incarcerated, please do that. And as it relates to questions or comments that you all might have, please keep that in mind too. In addition to the Zoom, thing that we're on, we're simulcasting on YouTube and Facebook Live and Instagram. So there's lots of people, who are watching this or hearing this.
And Richard, just to add in too, this is on the app itself as well. So you can see past episodes on the app. That media side is being built out right now, but all the past episodes are there and being organized. And so that's the easiest way to check it out if you don't want to use the YouTube process.
Seth, is that noise coming from your end that I'm hearing?
Probably. I'm in a hotel, in my evacuation hotel. So.
All right, so let's address that. Seth recently moved from San Diego.
Forcefully.
Well, Seth, we were all, let me back up. We were all in, no, I'm back up even further. We started our company in San Francisco as a tech company. We raised money from venture capital firms, et cetera, et cetera. And then at a certain point, I sort of got sick of San Francisco. I go, let's go to LA. I always liked LA. So we moved the whole company to LA, and that's where we were. And then the coronavirus hit. And then one by one, people started saying, well, I want to go here and I want to go there. And there was no reason for them not to. Seth moved to San Diego. At a certain point, Seth decided that the weather in San Diego was way too nice and he wanted to move. So he decided to move to Louisiana, to a town called Mandeville, right? Mandeville?
Put it on the map. There you go.
It sounds like a bone in your mouth, but in fact,
it's a town.
It's a smallish town in Louisiana. And Seth is into real estate and whatever. He's got his empire he's working on. So Seth moved there not that long ago, a few weeks ago, I think. And I guess the powers that be heard that he was just moved to Louisiana and thought it fitting to welcome him with a generationally destructive hurricane. So it decimated the town he just bought and built in and his home. And obviously the power went out and the flooding and whatever. So Seth bugged out of Louisiana and made a beeline to Texas, where he is right now. He hopes to return to Mandeville very, very soon, God willing, and begin the onerous process of going through roll upon roll of paper towels, mopping up all the flooding that's like 4 feet high in his basement. So you're going to have to stock up on the paper towels for sure.
Yep. It was definitely an appropriate welcome.
All right, let's. I can go on with this rap for a while, but we have more important things to do, and that is to talk about our guest tonight. No stranger to fans of the Yard. He is our dear friend, Divine. Divine is original host of the Yard. Tell him to shut up, Seth.
Don't shoot me here.
So my point was that Seth is in some, I don't know, shared workspace or something, or
A hotel.
Starbucks,
I'm in,
a hotel that he has to be working out of. All right. So, okay. So we have with us, as Seth, turn off your volume, seriously.
Adrian, just turn me back on in a bit.
Thank you. So we have as our guest tonight, one of our favorite people. He's on our team at Commissary Club, and he's been with us for several years now. And he is really just a great guy and a funny guy, an articulate guy, a passionate guy, and an effective guy. And he is known to some as Victor Lombard, but he's known to most as Divine. Divine, how are you, my friend? Thanks for joining us on The Art as a guest tonight.
Peace. Thank you for having me. It's a little different, but I'll fit in.
You will certainly fit in. You know the secrets, so you can do it.
Exactly.
I heard about Divine. I was reading the New York Times several years ago, and there was a story about this guy who came from the hip hop world, and this guy who had been in prison, and he sort of had a hustle going, and he had read about someone named Ben Horowitz. Ben Horowitz, for those of you who don't instantly recognize his name, is the Horowitz from Andreessen Horowitz. Andreessen Horowitz is one of, if not the most prominent venture capital firms in the world. And they have had enormous success backing, just about every successful startup that's other than us, that's ever been. And it turns out Ben Horowitz is a big fan of hip hop music. And Divine heard about this, and he wrote Ben Horowitz a cold letter introducing himself and, telling about his background and saying, hey, I'd love to learn more, and, I want to grow, and I want to, I need a new life, and can you help me, basically? And you can fill in the blanks here. And shockingly, Ben Horowitz responded. And it began a friendship that lasts to today, and opened up a lot of doors for Divine. So I'm sure we'll go into that at a certain point here. But the question I have to ask to start is, number one, where did the name Divine come from?
Oh, yeah. That's I really get asked that question. People just accept it for what it is.
What is it?
Well, initially, when I was incarcerated, I was lost. I was just really distraught about my situation. I really couldn't make heads or tails of it. But prior to my being arrested by the feds, I was in the boys training school. And while I was there, a brother of mine wrote me a letter. He was locked up in the adult institution that wasn't far from where I was at in the boys training school. And he wrote me a letter and was like, yo, I'm studying this spiritual system around the Nation of Islam, the 5% Nation. And he was sharing with me this ideology, the spiritual ideology and system that I was really like oblivious to. And he was sharing this with me. At the same time he was sharing this with me, I came across an article in the Rolling Stone about this same system and how the spiritual system was prevalent throughout hip hop, and a lot of hip hop artists at the time that were considered righteous or conscious hip hop artists. And so part of that spiritual system was a supreme mathematics and supreme alphabet, as they called it. And each number corresponded with the letter of this alphabet. And the fourth letter in the alphabet was divine. It was called D Divine. And my name at the time, my full birth name is Victor D. My middle name is Damon, D-A-M-O-N. And I was always called Damon all my life, or Cool D as a street name. And so when I learned the spiritual system and I adopted it, I looked at it and I kind of spelt my name out. This is how they taught you to spell your name out with these alphabet and mathematics. So my name spelled out with supreme alphabets was Divine Allah Master Cipher Now. So when I discovered that, it spoke to me spiritually that it's time for me to master my cipher. And cipher is a person, place, a thing. And in this case, it was about me mastering my life. So I adopted that, and I said, "Oh, divine Allah, that's my attribute." So I took on that righteous attribute, if you would, and then from there on, after I went to the feds, I kind of doubled down on that and kept studying, and then I changed my name while in prison. And when I returned to the streets after 7 years, I wasn't known as Damon anymore. I was known as Divine. And then after that, after meeting Ben and all this other stuff, to fast forward, Divine became an acronym: determine, idea, visualization, infinitely never ending. Because I was always in my mind and always thinking about like these ideas, and I was always determined and ambitious. So that's kind of how it evolved from one thing to the next.
Thank you. I never asked you that before, but thank you for explaining that. It's very, very interesting. Normally we try to confine the conversation to in-prison experience, and we certainly want to get into that a little bit too. But I would love people to know more about you and about your path. You're from Rhode Island, right?
You're born and raised Newport, Rhode Island, yeah.
Newport, Rhode Island, a fancy vacation area, but that really wasn't much of your life, was it?
That wasn't my experience, nah, not at all.
What was your experience?
I grew up middle class, so by the age of 10, I had grew up middle class. My mother always worked. My father was not really like stable in my household, but I knew who he was. But after 10 years old, my life shifted abruptly into a state of poverty and despair. And I lost my mother's motherhood, if you would. And by the time I was 13 years old, she was addicted to drugs. So my early childhood was a beautiful.
Wait. Excuse me for interrupting. You lost your childhood. She was addicted to drugs.
By 13.
You were 13,
yeah,
right?
13 years.
So what does that, I mean, I understand what that means, but what did that mean as far as what your life and how things changed? How were you even aware of what your mom was going through?
I really wasn't fully aware. I just know I was going through it, and I really didn't question it, because when you're young, you can't really process. You really can't process those things and what's really going on. You just go with the flow, whatever, however it's directed. And like I said, I was raised middle class, so I had that upbringing of a middle class individual. But then when all that stuff befell me at 10 years old, and by 13, she's addicted to drugs. I was learning on the fly, if you would. I was learning on the fly what this meant, and how it affected my life.
Okay. Your father, at that point, you were not seeing a lot of. And I just want, before you answer that, we had a guest on a couple of weeks ago, and somebody in the audience, who I think maybe it was her first time joining us, so maybe she really didn't know what to expect. But I think we were laughing about something, and she apparently felt like, it was insensitive, perhaps, or I'm not exactly sure, but that in some way it was exploitive of our guest. And, prior to us beginning 2 weeks ago, I had a conversation with this guy, and I said, listen, is there anything you don't want to talk about? Is there anything you're uncomfortable with? Because we don't have to go into it. If it really hurts, you don't have to, open your veins in front of a bunch of strangers. We don't want you to do that. And he said, no, I want to talk about everything. I'm completely transparent. So when we started talking about things that were clearly painful, you know, he obviously was uncomfortable, and this woman was sort of offended. So I just want to, for the record, if you don't mind, Dee, we're talking about stuff that's as close to the bone and as painful as it can be for a person, right? A young boy watching his mother, what she's going through. You're okay talking about this, right?
No doubt, absolutely.
Okay. I just want to make sure. I mean, we talk about this stuff offline all the time. And the three of us, Seth, Divine, and I, are close. We've all been through prison, so there are times we laugh about the experience, but we also honor each other's, what we've gone through, as well as all the people we work with. We have a great deal of respect for them. But sometimes, as you said, Dee, there are so, you just can't cry any more tears. All you have left are laughs, right? Do you feel that way now, by the way?
Yeah, like a lot of times, like even to this day, when I speak about this, certain things will trigger deep emotions and deep trauma. And it's almost like triggers, if you would. And it taps into the deep trauma and the deep pain that I held for so long. Like I didn't ask to be a crack dealer. I didn't ask, to be sent to prison. I did things that sent me to prison, but all I was trying to do was survive, man. I was trying to reclaim the life that I lost, reclaim my mother, man, and save my mom's. And that was really like all I was trying to do, man. And, you know, it's like, man, the way the world is set up, man, it's like, it doesn't like, it's like casualty. I became a casualty of the war on drugs. I became a casualty of my mother's drug addiction. I became a casualty of all of the negative things that you could speak of somebody coming from poverty. So when I came from middle class and was thrust into poverty, my middle class upbringing really gave me the intelligence and the wherewithal to be able to navigate in poverty and through poverty in the streets in a more advanced way than my peers. So I was able to think and move in a way that was superior, if you would. Not that I was superior, because I was in the same conditions, but my mindset was just different. And that allowed me to excel and elevate much more rapidly.
So because you came from a middle class background and you had a good education and your mom was very involved with your life as a positive force at this point, and then so your mom sort of, her life took a sort of went south on her,
Yeah.
and you felt an obligation to take care of the family, or
I
what?
mean, I mean, I
What
just
motivated?
my honestly, man, my whole determination was just to reclaim reclaim my life, man, reclaim my mother not being on drugs, reclaim, you know, the peaceful and positive environment that I came from. And there was no other way for me to do that. At 13 years old, imagine the choice I had to make at 13 years old. I had to make adult decisions, and I had to figure out, like, how do I do this? And the only resources for me was hustling and drug dealing. And that was the power, because that brought the money and it allowed me to try to shift this. And I did it all for naught, because I couldn't comprehend the huge problem and complex problem that was before me. I thought that, I get money, I get my mother off drugs, I get out the hood, we back to square one, we back to normal, man. And that's what I was seeking, that life. And that's what drove me before I had my child. You know what I'm saying? That's what drove me to get out of that and bring my mother out of that.
When we have a lot of people on, right, and that say, I didn't know any other way. I didn't, that was it. I already had people that were already going down the road. We knew prison was just a part of it, right? Like, was that present with you too? Was that kind of like, oh, if I go into this lifestyle, was it conscious? Was it, you know what I mean? Were you like, oh, I know that this is on the horizon potentially,
Yeah,
at least?
yeah, absolutely. When you live in the hood and you live in poverty, and you see everybody in poverty and you see everybody like struggling and striving, it's like you understand, like you hear the war stories. You see people that was in prison, that came out of prison. And at the time that I came up, it was just transitioning from the older generation was coming out of the weed game, like, you know, selling joints and shit like that. And we was going into the crack game. I came up in the crack game. So that was more in a more advanced game. That was a more advanced situation where you could amass large amounts of money in short periods of time. So if your mind wasn't right, you didn't know how to deal with that dynamic and leverage it. But my mind was at a point where I knew how to do that. I would stack my money, and I was trying to get to that proverbial kilogram, because I knew that a kilogram would save my life, would change my life, would bring me back to what I wanted to go back to and save my mother from being addicted to drugs. And so I thought.
Yeah. Huh. That's ironic. How old were you when you started dealing drugs?
I was about 12 or 13 years old. I started selling like marijuana joints, like buying an ounce of marijuana for $100, turn it into like $200 by making joints and rolling them up, selling them for $2 a piece. So that's what I started out as.
This is way before legalized marijuana for sure.
Yeah. No, definitely way before that. That was like, you know, the smoking the joints type shit. So, but then my man put me on the coke and was like, yo, fucking with the coke. And I was like, all right, well, you know, all right, let's see what it is. And then in my projects that I was living in, there were people from the major city, Providence in Newport, that flooded the whole Newport, and they like controlled the whole drug trade. Because these guys were from city guys, and we're from Newport. We're from like a little city by the sea. We weren't as advanced as the dudes from Providence, where the murders go down and all that real shit go down. So when they came and flooded the projects, we kind of picked up how they was moving in the streets, and I connected with an African dude who eventually put me on and gave me my first pack, and that's what led to me doing, you know, led to me becoming independent in the drug trade.
Okay, so you're 13, 14 years old. You start selling loose joints, which goes to coke, which graduates to crack, because that's where the most money is at. You're in a small town not far from Providence, which is sort of quiet. It's not a heavy duty violence, scene. And here you are, I guess, 15, 16 years old, maybe, you know, not even in high school yet. You're going into high school, and all of a sudden you've got yourself quite a business going, don't you?
Yeah, man. Like I'll tell you my formula. My formula was real simple. I get an ounce of cocaine for like 800, maybe $800,000, and you could make like 2,500 off that. So you cook it up, and you know, you cook it up, you break it down, you're making about 2,500 off that. So what I would always do was I take the $1,000 that I spent, I spend that again. But what I would do was I double that up. So instead of getting 1 ounce that I got initially, I get 2 ounces, and then I put the profit away, and I let that stack. And I have 2 ounces, and I did the same thing, kept repeating that process. And then when I got to a level of, you know, like I was doing kilograms at that point, I eventually got workers for me. I got workers on the block, and I gave them basically a deal they couldn't refuse on some Godfather shit. You know what I mean? Something they couldn't refuse, and I put it in motion just mathematically, and it all worked out. And that's what kind of like allowed me to transcend everybody else that was doing the same thing I was doing.
So did you?
Because they wouldn't reinvest? Is that the reason?
I don't know what they were doing. I didn't really care what they were doing. I'm just giving you my formula of how I did it. And they would like, so at that time, I was like a square, if you would. Like, I didn't drink, I didn't go to clubs, I didn't go to strip clubs. Like, I did none of that stuff. They was into all that. I was into getting that money because I had a goal. Like by 16, I had my son. So I had a goal, like, to get my family out the projects. And this was my goal and my focus. You know what I mean? And I think that comes from my upbringing, you know, and that comes from my, you know, how my mother raised me to basically apply those principles in the drug trade and in life to basically like get, you know, better yourself, like elevate beyond.
Yeah. It's amazing. And we'll talk about this later, I'm sure, more in depth too, but it's amazing. Like even just the the couple minutes you were talking about the formula and everything like that, how much of that is just so applicable in business, in other
Right.
parts of life, right? All those lessons. And it's just like, oh, those are all the right things, right? You 2.5x your cost, and
Yeah,
you got good
you invest-
margins, right?
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
you keep your overhead low, right? You do
Right,
these
right,
things,
right,
right? Those are
All business principles.
those are exactly,
That's what Kevin writes. It's a sad story that he goes, I have heard this all of my life. So many entrepreneurial folks in prison.
Yeah.
It's hard to see the light in the darkness. And he refers to Highway Rick Ross, who we had as a guest.
Yes,
Ricky was a guest of ours,
yes,
and
he
he
was.
was
Yeah,
one of, I want to talk about entrepreneurialism in prison, definitely. And it's something that the three of us talk about all the time. But going back to when you were 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, you're selling drugs, the money is growing, you're getting more of your friends, I guess, involved in your business, but it never really got violent or scary, right? You weren't walking around with a gun. There wasn't rival gangs that you were dealing with, right? As I
well,
recall.
yeah, no, I definitely I had a few guns. I always loved guns. I had a guy who was a little bit older than me who was actually on my case, who basically put me onto firearms and would teach me how to shoot and and all that. But there wasn't really violence in Newport like that. So yeah, so it was unnecessary if you think about it. Like, yeah, you're right. It was definitely unnecessary, but that was part of the crime culture, having a gun and having guns and having access to them. So yeah, so I had guns, I had access to them, but that wasn't a large part of who I was. I was more like a peaceful, cool dude that just wanted to make my money, man. I just wanted to get my money, and there was no gang violence and none of that going on. There was really no rivalries going on in Newport like that. In Providence, it was a different thing. That's where all the murders and all that type of shit was going down. So yeah, so it was more peaceful if you would. We had our little things here and there where we had to blow guns off, but nothing like really serious like that. No, not at all.
I'm not a businessman. I'm a business man.
I just wanted to get my money, man. I had a goal. I had a goal in mind. Like I had a goal, and I was sticking to it. Like I just wanted to get to the kilo, and I felt like the kilo, the proverbial kilo, would take me from the project. It would take my mother, would get my mother off of drugs. I was dreaming. I was a dreamer. I was young. I was a kid. I didn't realize that it took more than that. I didn't understand the dynamics that it took to get somebody off drugs.
Well, in a way, it's not more, or it's not just more, but in a way, the path you were going inevitably would undermine that effort. I mean, it would, you would end up in prison for 7 years,
Right.
which
And it
was certainly
right.
no way to rebuild your family, right?
Nah, not at all. And that's the irony of it all. Like my mother's addicted to drugs. I'm selling the same drugs to other people's mothers.
So how did you reconcile that?
I just say what it is. It's like I was in survival mode. It wasn't even about me even thinking about a moral obligation. It was more about I have a survival obligation. You know what I mean? So when I look back at it, I'm like, the irony of it's crazy because I'm selling drugs to get my mother off drugs, but I'm causing the addiction of other. I'm causing the perpetual addiction of other mothers that are on drugs. So I'm creating the same problem that I'm trying to rectify or fix in my own life, but I'm doing the same thing to other people's mothers. So when I look back, I'm like, yo, I felt like nah, that wasn't the way to go. But at the time, I'm more like, yo, I'm the man. I'm making money. I'm just trying to do what I got to do to survive. When you're in survival mode, man, it's like no holds barred, man. It's like you got to do what you got to do to make it happen. And then I have my son at 16. So that made me even more gung ho on to try to make shit happen so I could take my family out of that. Not just my mother, but my personal family, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So let me ask you, do you feel guilty as you look back on this? And I mean, the irony, like you say, is just absolutely stunning. You saw the negative impact of drugs on someone you love dearly, and yet that was how you were earning a living. Of course, you were a young kid, so what the hell did you know about anything? But I still feel guilty about shit I did. And, you know, for me, it was a long time ago, but I still feel it. Do you still feel it?
Yeah, man. I mean, I feel like, them times that I was doing what I was doing, like I'm responsible for a lot of, for killing a lot of people in a sense of, giving them drugs and destroying their lives because I added to that. You know what I mean? I definitely feel the guilt of that and it weighs heavy on me. And that's why, like now in my older age and understanding, the dynamics of what was going on, I forgive myself because I was a kid, I was a child. But at the same time, like I'm like, damn, like that shit was wicked. That was wicked shit going on, man. And how and that's the majority of what happens in the hood and in poverty when you're trying to live. It's like you prey on your own people, you prey on your own circumstances and not really realizing like what you fucking doing, man. Pardon my language, but not realizing what you're doing, man, until you get older and realize that. Because I was a substantial drug dealer by the age of 19. And that's still, the brain's not even fully developed by that age. I'm a teenager. So it's like, I had the power and the access to drugs and able to do what I was doing. But at the same time, I didn't really realize what I was doing.
You didn't connect the dots. I got to tell you, that's one of the things I really love about you, Divine, is how brutally honest you are.
Yeah.
And self-aware. And, we have guests on. I was talking to Seth about this today, I think. We were talking about one of our guests, and this guy had done some bad things. And yeah, he came from a tough situation, and, there were all kinds of reasons, but there didn't seem to be one molecule's worth of sense of responsibility or even remorse,
Right.
And I don't get that. I don't get that. How you can be so, disconnected from that sense of response, that you were the one who pulled the trigger at the end of the day, and yes,
Right.
maybe that was your only decision, but still, what a terrible decision to have to make and to
Right.
live.
Right.
D,
You know?
let me ask you that. Richard mentioned the only decision. I mean, like you're a smart dude, even though you're 16, 13, as grown up, like you're a smart guy. Your intelligence is clear even at that age, right? You don't know shit about the world yet, but like,
Right.
did you know there was other things, or was it like this is it and this is like the easiest? Like I don't know. I think most of us when we commit crimes, a lot of it is like it's the easier way to go, right? Like it's just like, okay, this is going to get me to where I want to get to faster. I don't care who it hurts, don't care what laws it breaks, et cetera, et cetera. Did you see it like that, or was it just like, what, this is what's in front of me, I'm going for it, type of thing, or were you like, I'm choosing not to do something else?
No, that's a great question. I'm gonna explain to you this like this. It's like my immediate environment, I knew and understand the dynamics of it. I knew how it moved. I knew all the mechanisms
You
of
were
it.
already an expert.
I knew it all. But what changed, what was different for me was I was an individual that left Newport. So I would travel to Providence a lot. I traveled to New York a lot. So I was getting intel, if you would, or stimulus from these different areas and understanding how the game was how it's played at a higher level in a much more violent and more detrimental way than Newport. So I was exposed to that at an early age. So that and my intelligence allowed me to comprehend all that and say, damn, I thought
an opportunity.
What was the projects? I'm out in Philadelphia. That's the projects. I'm out in New York. That's the projects. And I'm elevating so fast in the game. Like you said, like I'm understanding the dynamics of the environment and I'm being exposed to bigger things, but only in the drug trade, not in the sense of what's outside of the drug trade for me that's available. Only within the drug trade was I learning the expansion of these things.
So it never occurred to you, like Seth is asking, hey, I could go to college. I'm smart enough.
Or I could take a different product and go, okay, this product is, I could 2.5x the cost of it and do the same thing, and and all that, but you just didn't see it as
I think
exposed to it.
Yeah, well, I think things don't change when you have a certain psychological set is that things don't change unless something dynamic happens. So when I had my son at 16, that kind of shifted my mental into, I got to kind of figure this out for him and kind of position this thing for him and his mother and create something different. So I actually did enroll in New England Tech to go into video and radio production. But by the time I was ready to do that, and I was actually opening a sneaker store at the time, and I was actually moving out the projects to like condos. So I had to position all that to do that. So I was thinking like that.
Yeah.
But by the time that I got to that point to do that and pull that trigger, I had already committed the crime where I would go to federal prison for, and they stopped all that.
Yeah, it always is like one day.
Yeah, like on some heat shit. Like, you know what I mean? I'm just getting out the game, my last lick. But
how many times did you hear that on the yard? Like this is my last run. I was just going to TJ one last time. I was just, flying the plane one last time.
Everybody's on their last run, their last brick, their last 2 bricks, whatever it was.
Right.
And game over.
All right, so let's now talk. You told me the story of how you got arrested, and we could spend the rest of our time together telling this story. It's just a long, involved, sort of crazy story. But bottom line is, you ended up in prison. Do you remember that day, your first day in prison?
Yeah. I was in a state facility being held. And
how old were you then?
I was 19. I was 19. I just turned 19. They arrested me in October or September of 1992. And I got sentenced in 93. And when I got sent to the federal prison, like the thing that I remember the most is being shackled up early in the morning from the state joint. I was shipped up to New Hampshire. I was put on Conair, and Conair flew all the way to Oklahoma. That was like the processing center at the time. Yeah, you process through there. Yeah, everybody processed through Oklahoma. The plane pulls up, you get off, you're right inside the prison. And I remember like when they went through everything, it's my first time being away from home that far. And I was like one of the first dudes from Rhode Island, charged with the crack cocaine law. So I'm like one Rhode Island dude, a lone Rhode Island dude with the 070 number, being sent to the feds. And I remember going to my cell. It was almost like a dungeon. It was a holding place. So I went in there, and I think I told you this, Richard, when I walked into the room, on the bed was a Quran. It was on the pillow, just a Quran. And when I saw that, because I had started studying Islam and like the spiritual system I explained earlier about my name. And when I saw that Quran, I took that as a sign and symbol that, that the Most High was with me. And I felt, even though I felt depressed, I felt broken, I felt relief when I saw that, because it was something like faithful in me that I felt like my life is headed this way for a reason. I don't know what it is at this point, but I know something is going to come out of this much greater than what I think it is.
Wow. So you had that sense of destiny almost.
I've always had that sense of destiny.
Me too.
Always.
Me too. Do you always have a sense of destiny, Seth?
Yeah, I mean, I know things happen and they confirm kind of things, and whether it's deja vu, whether it's like, just the hand of God or whatever you want to call it, like showing up in ways like, okay, I got it. Like this is the way it's supposed to go.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, even when it's tough, I mean, even when it's not the choice that I would necessarily choose to make, because it's not the easy choice, right? And that's a lot of times where growth and expansion and all the things that are that are a higher level, right? We get forced to go through.
Do you believe you were put on this earth for a reason, Seth?
Besides being tall?
Well, you were made tall to
NBA great.
Your destiny.
Besides being a juggling tall guy?
That's you don't know.
I don't know.
Definitely the tallest guy in the Zoom call. He's 7'1", and if you hang out with him, it's just an amazing thing that everyone is watching him constantly, and every person comes up with the same question. You must have played in the NBA. And, and of course, that's
Matter of
it.
factly, I did.
Which he did. So I just couldn't believe it. Like, you know, and Seth is such a nice, good heart. It would annoy the hell out of me, but Seth enjoys it.
God knows what he's doing. He wouldn't give you that.
Dee, were you put on this earth for a reason?
Without question, without question. And I think that, so to backtrack real quick, when I was 10 years old, before all that befell me with my mother abruptly, it was late. It was like, we were living in this middle class area, which is now like subsidized housing, called Rolling Green. And I was riding my bike that I got for my birthday the year before. And I'm riding my bike and it's like early evening, like probably like 5 or 6, dusk. And I got this feeling over me. And all I could say about this feeling was that it made me look up to the sky as I'm riding my bike. I looked up and I heard this voice say, "Don't worry, everything's gonna be all right."
Whoa.
And that's what I remember hearing.
Wow.
But I didn't realize this spiritual experience. I didn't remember it or recall it until I was in prison.
Whoa.
And I got sentenced. And when I recalled, I was like, yo, that's crazy. It brought me back to that same exact time. And I remember that happening to me. I was like, yo, that's wild. So I've always felt a great sense of destiny and that I was destined for great things and to be the great individual, like extraordinary individual, actually. And I think that my entire life has been evidence of that in every way, whether it was in the drug street doing drugs or selling drugs or whatever in the game, or just what I'm doing now over the last 7 years with my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. In my opinion, Dee, as someone who knows you fairly well, your true destiny hasn't revealed itself to you yet. That there, is my opinion, that there is in fact greatness that lies ahead. And as long as, you are bold and brave, you will get there. And, there are incredible things. And I hope we're part of it, but I'm prepared for that not to be the case. Because I really do feel like, I'm going to talk about you, this guy I knew, and look at him now, sort of.
Wow, thank you, brother. That means a lot.
You're capable. You're absolutely, me, I'm an old man, but you're capable,
Thank you, brother.
I think it's there. So after after leaving Oklahoma, they took you to a federal prison, and, was that hard for you to adjust to? Was that a scary place for you?
Yeah, let me explain why it was hard. Because, I was born and raised in Newport, Rhode Island, small city, small state, also in the union at all the states. And it's like almost like it's like a vacuum, if you would. There's not much, it's predominantly white, predominantly, racist. I experienced that all my life. So there's not much culture there. There's not much, African-American culture. You align with it growing up. So I never had that touch point. New York gave that to me. So I gravitated to New York heavily. But when I was moved from Rhode Island and went to Oklahoma and then went to Ashland, Kentucky to a medium prison, like being that far away from home was almost like it was a challenge within itself, because I'd never been that far away from home before. And I traveled to New York, the Eastern Board, but I'd never been that far away from home. So that was like a whole experience within itself I had to adjust to. And then being in prison and nobody's from Rhode Island. Good thing that I had a strong affinity for New York, and I had blended in with New York so well that I could, people thought I was from New York. So I was just dealing with New York dudes throughout my prison bid, because nobody was from Rhode Island. I was the first crack case. Nobody got arrested for the crack cocaine law till 10 years after I had got arrested. That's how much ahead about my time I was. So it was
another good business principle. But
ahead of the curve, right?
You get the first mover advantage.
Yeah, exactly. First mover advantage, right? So it was hard to adjust, but I eventually did. And I just adapted to it, man, and adapted to it, if you would. Adopted it.
So you made a decision pretty early on, the way you've told me, that you were going to get as much out of the prison experience as you possibly could in planning for your ultimate release, right?
Yeah, yeah. When I got sentenced, my son and his mother was there when I got sentenced in court, and I remember the judge saying to me, "Consider it like going away to college," and that just stuck with me. That he said that, and the minute I was sentenced to 7 years, immediately his mother burst into tears, crying, and my son was only 3 years old at the time, and he just started crying immediately because she was holding him. So I'm hearing that behind me. I'm in tears, like trying to plead my case, like, I had a rough childhood. My mother was on drugs, like it's like trying to plead my case, but they wasn't hearing none of that. He was like, "Yo, consider it like going away to college, 84 months, 7 years," and that's what I did. I took that to heart, and I turned my prison experience into a self-development lab.
Self-development lab. Before we talk about where that took you, you had a son who was 3 years old.
Yeah,
And knowing I'm sure you were very, very close to him
that's my heart, man.
every day of his life from the day he
Word
was
up,
born.
word up.
What it's like I almost don't want to ask the question because but like what was how did you what was it like to be separated from him like that? And did that make you feel guilty that what you had done had created that separation?
When I had my son, man, 16, man, that was like the greatest thing one of the great experiences of my life, man. And leaving him was like the worst thing for me, man. You know what I mean? It's like, man, like, yo, it's like he gave me strength when I was locked up. He gave me strength because I felt like, yo, one day I'm gonna return to him. He gave me courage. He gave me hope. Like in prison, I just, no matter what befell me, just think about him. Just gave me that hope and that courage to like get through it and to be strong because I knew that no matter what, when I returned, I had to, I had to, do for him. So when I was away, I would write him letters. He's 3 years old, and I would write him letters, tell him what I was doing daily, and just talk to him so that one day he would read those letters and know and understand that, like, I didn't leave because I wanted to leave, but circumstances dictated that. And no matter what, I love him. And I'm going to return to, rebuild with him. That's one of the worst things I suffered in prison. No matter what anybody else did, my son was like my hope and my like my like just my strength, man. Honestly, and I did my best to make sure I stayed in contact. I called, I wrote letters because I didn't want to. No, I didn't want to lose that. You know what I mean? Well,
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. But the sort of the cycle has been kind of completed because your son a few weeks ago just had a baby. And now you're a grandfather. And you're
indeed,
definitely, and you are around for that, aren't you?
indeed, indeed.
Yeah. So, you know, Stay close to your grandkid, that's for sure. Well, thank you for sharing that. So you know, you're in prison, you're learning, you're going to the library, your spiritual journey is deepening, I know. Um, when did you begin sort of formulating your plans on what you wanted to do when you got out, and what did you come up with?
Really, like I dug into just educating myself more. Spirituality was a big thing for me at the time. Just really fortifying my mental and my emotions and my spirituality. That was huge for me because I was exposed to it early on, and I just kept building on that. I always had a gift of being, you know, with words, and I always, you know, hip hop was my love. But I said I want to be a hip hop rap recording artist when I come home. So I started formulating like my ideas of coming home, and when I returned, being a hip hop rap recording artist, but also being a businessman and starting my own record label. So I started reading books around that. My best friend at the time, when I left, he bought me a book about music business. I studied that. I bought my own books throughout the time I was there. And I also took ACE courses around, you know, building business plans. And I learned how to write my own business plan. So I would write a whole business plan about, you know, this record label that I wanted to create. And that was like kind of like my goal. And that's kind of how I said, okay, I'm gonna come home, I'm gonna get this record label, I'm gonna turn my talent into a profession and build off that. And that was kind of my goal at the time.
Okay, let me be, Seth, just one sec. I just wanted to share a couple of comments, you know, that our folks have made. Liliana simply says, "Congrats, Divine," and I think that's like a very simple statement, but a very big statement too. You know, Jane writes, again, Divine takes responsibility to remain connected with his son. Again, the idea of a goal rises up, which we see and hear all the time. But, you know, definitely congratulations are in order. You know,
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Speaking for everybody. Seth, what do you have to say?
Yeah. Now, so you mentioned like the inside and like studying and digging in, right? Both spiritually, you guys, and hip hop, and you know, we have this kind of opportunity with Meek Mill and Dream Chasers, right, coming up, right? And you and I know you, right? So I know you like the business side, right? You get to that side. Okay, I want to make moves. I want to, I want to put things that, you know, you're an operator, right? So so how much of it was you wanting to be an artist, you know, versus a businessman? Like I said, my assumption is you like that business side more, you know, and maybe you can just, you know, talk about that and like, were you flowing inside? Were you like, oh, okay, I'm gonna,
yeah. Like I would, like, honestly, like I've been compared to the best of them. I've been compared to like the level of Nas, Wu-Tang. Like I got the accolades in prison. Like I would battle anybody in prison. I would do prison shows and hone my skills. Back then I had stage fright. So I used to wear the black sunglasses and get on stage and just do my thing. And you know, the prison people, prison is the worst critics you can ever find on the planet. You don't perform well, they're gonna see you after the show. You know what I'm saying? So I would hold my skills. I'd be in the bedroom doing my thing.
That's a good point.
And I really became like that sharp and that high level lyricist, which I always had confidence. And my name would ring from one prison to the next. When I got to the next, like, oh, you that dude Divine that they knew about, that was building and, you know, spitting knowledge and doing your thing. So I never really stressed that. But with the business side, I always say, yo, I don't want nobody to control my art. I don't want nobody to tell me they have creative control over me. I don't want nobody to make more than what I make or what the fuck I do. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, on the business side, I wanted to learn that shit too, so I could control my thing. And that's why I built my own record label, and I was signed to my own shit. And that's that's why I wasn't successful, because I was so up on the game of what record labels do. No record labels wanted to fuck with me because I'm going in there like, yo, and that was unheard of at the time.
Okay, so So jumping ahead, you leave prison after 7 years, right? And you go back to Rhode Island, and your son at this point is about 10, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're reconnecting with him. How is your mom at this point?
Yo, crazy, because I was in prison and nobody supported me. Everybody abandoned me. I was sent far away from home, so I probably saw my son throughout the 7 years, probably outside of Rhode Island. I probably saw him 2 to 3 times max throughout my whole entire bid. And my mother never really wrote me. No one really sent me money, so I had to work unicorns. We talked about this before. I worked unicorn to survive, making $100 a month and living off that. My mother, when I came home, was still in shambles. She was still addicted to crack cocaine. I came home, I got back in the game. Unfortunately, I went to a crib. I laced the whole crib out. Water wall carpet, new furniture. I eventually, after I was on probation, I moved in with her. Everything laced up, you know what I'm saying? But still, that was not enough to take her from her addiction. And she was still addicted to crack cocaine. So it didn't really matter what I did. It was all for naught at the end of the day, because a year and a
You
half
were
later.
dealing crack. You were dealing crack. She was taking crack, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Did you ever give her crack?
Nah, hell no. Never in my life. Never. Never. The worst thing I could say that was the exchange of me and her, mother and son, in dealing with the drug trade, was that she told me how to cook powder cocaine. And I really ever tell that to anybody, because I'm really embarrassed of that, for the sake of, you know, how it plays on her. Not really so much me. But yeah, and I remember I'm revealing that really here in front of this whole audience, but that's the worst thing I could say that ever happened around crack. You know what I'm saying? With the drug trade that I was in, she taught me how to cook crack.
Oh, but you never got high on your own supply.
No, I never done drugs. Never. Never.
Never done drugs.
Never.
Interesting. Interesting. So you came out, you were slinging again. How long were you doing that until you stopped?
I didn't. I went back to prison. They stopped me. I wasn't
Right.
stopping.
How long was it?
A year, about a year. I was out about a year and a half, year and 9 months, and I was back in federal prison on a violation.
Right. Okay.
Was that a new charge or a violation?
It wasn't the violation held more time than the new charge would.
Jesus.
So they violated me versus charging me with a new charge.
All right, create a new charge.
That started my cycle of recidivism.
Okay. What finally got you out of the trade?
My last time in prison 9 years ago, just really, like they took like $250,000 from me. I was fucking mad about that. I didn't want to give it to them. I tried to fight them, and they told me if you keep fighting this shit. I had the whole courthouse talk, and I wrote my own motion, but in pen on paper, and sent it in, and was trying to fight it. And it was like, yo, you keep fighting. And my lawyer told me, like, you keep fighting this, you'll win. But if you fight this, they're gonna charge you with drugs and make you a career offender and give you 15 years. If you let it go,
ultimately lose anyway.
right? Let them take the money. They'll charge you with money laundering over $5,000, and you'll do a year, case closed, and you'll go home. But your money's done. So I was like, all right, well, because I had got the money from a legal source, even though I mixed it with illegal funds and was doing illegal shit with it, I got the initial money from a legal source. So at the end of the day, I accepted, and that's what happened. And but I became 100% dissatisfied when that happened. I'm like, yo, I'm done with this drug shit. I'm too smart for this. I got to figure out my life. And entrepreneurship was a thing that I thought about, because I love the process of making money, and business has always been at the forefront of who I am. So like, yo, I got to do entrepreneurship, and that's what kind of like put me on that path towards that. And that was the dynamic that kind of got me started.
So you mentioned that while prior to that, when you were trying to get your music career going, that because you knew the game so well, and because you probably opened your mouth and, asserted, what you thought was fair and right, that they didn't want to have anything to do with you because they couldn't take advantage of you, I guess.
Absolutely. Nah, they couldn't, because I was more like, at that time, there was nobody like coming at artists saying, I'm a label. I'm an artist, but I'm a label as well. So I was already on the bad side of the situation. So I would never get any interest in me because of that, because I had my own label, because I I had my own publishing company, like all these things that I had that the average artist knew nothing about to even position themselves, to strengthen themselves. Now it's common that these artists own their shit and they have their own labels. Not at the time I was doing it.
All right. So in retrospect, though, is there a part of you that feels like maybe you were a little too smart for your own good?
Not at all, because at the end of the day, you have to stand on integrity, man. You have to stand on what the fuck you believe in, man. If you don't stand for something, you fall for anything, like Malcolm X said. And I've always been that dude that has a strong spirit about integrity, and this is what it is. So, I accept the bullet.
What was your big entrepreneurial idea then?
In the sense of what? The record label?
Well, after the record label, and then you went back in and out of jail.
Yeah. So as you know, I met Ben Horowitz, and then not long after that, I ideated a company called Black FinTech, and Black was an acronym that stands for Build and Leverage Acquiring Knowledge, and it was based on just my experience in life, how I always was able to elevate to the highest level, because I always leveraged knowledge and information to get there. And I was always able to use that to leverage myself. So I built Black FinTech, and it was all about empowering people like me who come from poverty, who really want to, need to gain financial literacy and entrepreneurship education that I never had. Because financial services or financial information has always intrigued me for some reason. The process of money and how it moves and all these different things around it. And it always seemed foreign to me. I never understood it. So that's what I started building.
Okay. So you came up, and that included the Black card.
Yeah.
A credit card or a bank card or a debit card.
Yeah, debit card.
You
Yeah.
would be marketing towards African Americans primarily, people disenfranchised.
Yes.
And to teach financial literacy and to create generational wealth. And I mean, that was all part of the plan, right?
Absolutely. That was like the whole thing was like nothing at the time. There was only the rush card at the time, and that was usury, and that was it was high fees and all this. Russell Simmons doing his thing, and I felt like this was something that was different. And again, I was ahead of my time, because 5 years later we have all these other companies doing the same exact thing that I was talking about 5 years ago.
Right.
So time is
Yeah. Another good business lesson to the timing is important too.
Timing is everything. Timing is everything.
So has it crossed your mind, since there are all these other companies doing this, to try to, or have you tried to connect with any of these companies and find a role in an existing company that has the same sort of mission?
Well, yeah, I actually did do that with the company called Mochify, which is like the premier African American owned debit card company that's doing that. I connected with them. I had employment with them for a little while before I moved to Silicon Valley, before I joined 70 Million Jobs and Commissary Club. So I did definitely have that experience of doing that. But at the same time, what I felt was that not only could I do it better, but I don't, I'm not the type of dude, like I'm a boss myself. So being under a boss is like, it just doesn't feel right to me. So, I added my value in the ways that I could. And, I kept it moving because I had a vision for my own thing and what I wanted to do, being independent.
So you tried to raise some money as a tech startup, essentially.
Yeah.
5 years too early.
Yeah.
And you were disappointed with the results, right?
Absolutely. We raised a little bit of money, but I think my background held me back in a lot of ways. Sure. And because I didn't have the the business acumen that is desired for people to invest money. Had I had more of a credible business background, it would have been no problem. I mean, even if I was white, it would have been even easier. But you know, I'm fighting so many check boxes, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter that I'm connected to the, you know, to the one of the strongest guys in VC. You know, because I want to do it on my own. I'm not a dude that looks for handouts. I might look for a hand up, but I don't look for handouts.
No, you never, I can attest to that.
You know,
hey, Adrian, before we forget, we have a bunch of links of Divine's, if we can get them up now, including links to his music and some other things. So Age, if you're hearing this, please get them up there before we forget. You've always tried to advance your education, your knowledge. You took micro college courses, right?
Yeah, NATO degree. Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, NATO degree. I took a NATO degree in digital marketing.
NATO degree in digital marketing. And by the way, Divine is a world-class digital marketer. And you also connected with Udemy, right? Udacity.
Yeah,
right.
Udacity, yeah.
Udacity is an online education platform. They have millions of courses you can take. And they also are an organization that feels very strongly about kind of upskilling people so that they have options career-wise. And you got involved with them, right?
Yeah, I actually, Ben Horowitz and Felicia Horowitz actually gave me a scholarship to take a digital marketing NATO degree with Udacity. And from there, Ben eventually connected me to Sebastian Thrun, the founder and CEO at the time of Udacity. And we became friends. And I eventually, interviewed for a internship, and I got the internship. And that was my first real role in corporate. So it really gave me a lot of skills, and I learned how corporate works. So it was a great experience. And I was actually on it was an internship that turned into an actual contract. And that contract actually got renewed a few times as I was there. And I was able to create a course for people like me, a NATO degree course that's actually free. It was never published, but we're actually in talks with them now to see if we can publish that, whether through Udacity or through Commissary Club. That really like basically talk to the demographic I come from, and how I could position them or help them position themselves for career ready skills to high paying jobs in technology.
So
Yeah.
D, that's a great lead up for a question I got for you, man. So what, I mean, people are watching this now, right? People inside, people watching it live, people gonna watch it, you know, later on.
Yeah.
Like what kind of pieces of advice from two sides, from a business side, right? And from a I want to be a lyricist, I want to be a rap artist, I want to do this. Like what pieces of advice would you give? Because I assume there are different pieces of advice for both categories, but like what would you just drop?
I'll start with the lyricist first. Like, keep your day job.
Cool. Yeah.
Keep your day job. Nah. Now, if you got skills in lyrics, like, don't. To me, I'm like all about, like, if you have a dream, follow it. I've always like went down rabbit holes sometimes in things that I felt were meant a lot to me, whether it was a dream, and I pursued it. But you have 100 years on this planet, man, if you're blessed. So you got to really like gauge your time on this planet and how you're utilizing it and how you're going to move through life, because you can never get on as a lyricist or an artist. It's very limited. Like, it's like everybody in the hood wants to be a basketball player.
Yeah.
Everyone in the hood wants to be a football player. Like, the chances of that happening is slim to none. You know what I mean? And I used to tell my son this. My son was like ill at ball. But I used to always tell him, like, yo, like, back something up with that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have something outside of that. As far as business, I think business is the illest man-made creation that exists on this planet. Like, this business, because business business is like an open field, and once you got the knowledge and information, you could do what you want to do, man. I think it's more freedom in that than a 9-to-5 job, than trying to be a rapper or a football player or a basketball player. I think business and entrepreneurship is empowering, man. It empowered me.
Yeah.
And I have lofty goals that I want to pursue in business, that I'm not gonna stop until my breath is gone. Period.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there like one business book or one whatever, something that impacted you the most, that you'd be like, yo, if you gotta read this, you gotta check this out, whatever?
Yo, Think and Grow Rich, man, by Napoleon Hill.
It's a good one.
It's a must read. You must read that book.
Yeah,
That will
a couple times.
for winning. Period.
Yeah, you gotta read it a couple
If I had
times.
to name one, that's my one.
Yeah, it's good.
Straight up.
So Udacity puts their money where their mouth is, through Divine's connections and work and advocacy. They're giving us 10 scholarships for their platform that we can then award to, great deserving folks in our community.
Absolutely.
And they really have been in addition to, in general, Divine and his life and career, they've been really supportive of us too. So it's a great company with great people. I guess I have one last question, because we got a little bit of time. You are the archetypical entrepreneur. You have the gene, right? Certain people have it, certain people don't, but you've got it.
Yeah,
and no matter what would have happened to you, you were an entrepreneur at the youngest age.
Yeah.
Years before your career, if there's been, your downfall has been that you've always been too early for whatever you've done or tried doing. You were the first in Providence. You were the first, music person who wanted to control the business side. Your Black initiative. Now there's 1,000 of them, but you were not when you started. What is it about? Does prison make people entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs typically people who get in trouble more often than people who aren't? What's that correlation?
I think the correlation is that when you're coming from a survival mindset, you're innovative. You figure things out fast, right? And your necessity is what drives your innovation. It's a necessity that you need to make this money to survive. So it drives your innovation. And then that correlates to business in the same way. When you think about market, when you think about product, when you think about promotion and marketing, when you think about, distribution. Yeah, distribution. It runs parallel to that. So there's a lot of people who are in the streets doing illegal activity, where if they just stopped and said, you know what, I can take this and turn it over and transition this into legal business, I can find success. But like legally, it's harder, much harder than illegal. Because you have to define all these different things, product market fit,
taxes.
all these different things. Right, exactly. So there's so much red tape, if you would, that you got to go through, that people just get exhausted with it and be like, yeah, I'm just gonna do it illegal. And they just stick to that because that's what they know. Not knowing that the real rewards is doing it legal and creating something and building it, man.
Yeah.
And immediate gratification is another thing. Immediate gratification will always get you in trouble.
Always. 100%. Always my downfall. You got involved with Commissary Club. What does that mean to you? What do you think the potential is?
Commissary Club, man. When Seth first called me up about this shit, and he just wanted my input, I was a little, pissed off that he wasn't trying to bring me in initially. He just wanted my input and my feedback as somebody who was formerly incarcerated. But I was like, that's ill ass idea.
Not just somebody that's former incarcerated, someone that was intelligent,
knew
the business, knew what was going on.
Right. I was like, yo, Seth, this shit is ill. And I got some ideas for this. I could do this and I could do that. And, I pitched myself to the company. I was rejected initially, which is all good. But eventually, like, Commissary came back and was like, yo, you're the right dude for this. We want to bring you in and position you in this and help us build this thing. And like, there's nothing like it. Commissary Club is one of a kind. It's the first social network for people with criminal histories. And it's like all about community. We already knew that there was a job piece to this where we're connecting people to jobs that 70 million jobs is already doing. A venture-backed company, Y Combinator graduate, all that. But Commissary Club was special because it really dug into the needs of the community, people that really suffer from trying to transition with reentry and trying to really position themselves in a positive way. It's not easy for people to come from incarceration, whether it's a year, 2 years, or what have you, to come back into the free world and reestablish their lives. There's so much it entails to do that. And if you don't have, number one, if you don't have a support system, you're not going to be successful. I was one of those people. I didn't have a support system. I didn't want to go to a job making sandwiches at McDonald's or whatever it was and check the fucking box. I'm a formerly incarcerated individual or I got a record. I never wanted to do that. So I always lied on my applications and I never got the job because of that. They would research me and know, oh, he's been incarcerated. So Commissary Club really gives the tools, the resources that's necessary to have successful reentry. And the community, the support system is there. Yeah. So you can, like, please, anybody that's out there listening, if you know somebody that's been formerly incarcerated, have them sign up for Commissary Club, download the app, create a profile, and really engage the community.
And hit us up, like that's the thing too. Yeah.
I really feel Commissary Club has not reached its apex, and I think we're on our way to really showing the world what reentry done right looks like.
Dude, while you were talking, man, like one of the things that was really, really like prevalent as you were talking was like how, and I didn't even realize until you were saying it, but how lonely reentry is.
Oh man.
You know what I mean? How like nobody knows the fuck you're going through. You know what I mean? At any stage, whether you're a day out or 10 years out, like nobody fucking knows but other people that have gone through it, right? Like, and that's really what, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, that's what, like, I think Commissary Club is really all about. Well, like, yo, we can lean on each other. Like,
Absolutely.
Like it's like, that's what, what I think is amazing about it. And I didn't even realize that until you were just talking about it. Man, people say entrepreneurship is lonely, but fucking if they ain't been through reentry, man.
Entrepreneurship with a record.
Reentry is a lonely business.
Reentry is very lonely.
Listen, this is a great time for us to wrap things up. I knew we would have a great conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love hearing you talk, Divine. I keep telling you, I'm your biggest fan. And all I keep telling you is push more than you think and follow through, because there is greatness written all over you.
Thank you, brother.
Don't fuck it up. It's there, waiting to happen. I'm telling you, I don't say this to many people.
I know, bro.
I don't say it to Seth, but I do.
You're a hard critic. You're a hard critic.
I am a hard critic, but you are the real deal.
Thank you,
and
brother.
You're smart,
Absolutely.
And you're funny, and you have a huge heart, and you don't have a bad thing to say about anybody, and you're positive, and the world could use a lot more people like you. And our team could use a lot more people like you, because you bring so much, you have so much game to bring to the table. So thank you for opening your heart and sharing all these things that couldn't have been easy. You're amazing. And Seth, thank you. I couldn't do any of this stuff without you too. You are, you are the guy who makes the trains run on time. Plus Adrian, who is behind the scenes, plus a bunch of other people we work with. We're very lucky. And, part of our goal is always to show people who don't have the experience, who don't know, who only think of people with records as monsters or them or the enemy or whatever. Divine, you are, a glowing example that, we're not monsters and we're not the enemy. you know, that we're fine people with integrity and honesty and big hearts, because that's who you are. So thank you so much. Next week, you're back as a host. So
Off the
so
hot
The
seat.
hot seat. I'm on the hot seat next week.
off the hot seat for a while, and you know, now you're gonna have to play nice with our guests.
Yeah.
We will be back next week with another exciting guest. We thank everybody for joining us. It means the world to us that you're there. Please download Commissary Club and get in the habit of checking it out. And please just be there for each other, because if we don't do it for each other, nobody will.
I'd like to say
Everybody,
thank- Okay, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, everybody stay safe. There's so much going on in the world right now that's dangerous and scary. So everybody, please stay safe, and thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you to Udacity's Todd Floyd and Tyrone Peterson for joining us tonight. We appreciate you, the entire audience. We appreciate you. Please share what Commissary Club is doing. Please share the yard. If you know anybody that's formerly incarcerated or formerly system impacted, please have them download the app, join the community, and let's do this together.
Yep.
Love
All
you, D.
right.
Love you too,
Good
bro.
night, everybody.
All right. Thanks, y'all.
Be well.
Hey!